Gabbard has decided to once again check the DNC and the Democratic Party with their bias, their rigging. And this is in response to, of course, Joe Biden has two primary challengers, Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. Fox News was discussing the polls from Americans about how they feel about how Joe Biden has handled the economy, whether or not they approve of Joe Biden. And Tulsi Gabbard had some things to say. She took this opportunity not to just address that the majority of American Democrats do not want Joe Biden to run again, but also to address how the Democratic Party works and how they fix things in such a way that is unfair to anyone that they feel is outside of the status quo. Listen to this clip.
There's more bad news for President Biden, who is getting low ratings on pretty much every key issue ahead of 2024. A new AP poll reveals that 66% of Americans disapprove of the president's handling of the economy. 67% disapprove of his performance on gun policy, and the same percentage disapprove of his handling of immigration.
We're just going to look at these pictures. I want to look at this picture for just a second. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. 66% economy, disapprove. 67% gun policy, disapprove. Immigration, 67% disapprove. And yet, Joe Biden doesn't feel that he should have to debate his primary challengers. When the majority of Democrats, they don't even want you to run. They don't even want you to run. Let's go on. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. They are literally dragging this guy over the finish line. This is exactly what they're doing.
Of his performance on gun policy, and the same percentage disapprove of his handling of immigration. Meanwhile, Biden continues to face questions about his age and fitness to serve, even from those within his own party. Hillary Clinton now among them.
Now, there was that heart-stopping moment where he almost fell over coming down the stairs a day or two ago. Is that a concern?
Well, I mean, it's a concern for anyone. And we've had presidents who've fallen before who were a lot younger, and people didn't go into, heart palpitations. But his age is an issue. And
pause. So why is it okay for Hillary Clinton to admit that Joe Biden's age is an issue, but RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson will not say it? They have been interviewed multiple times and they have been asked that question and they won't answer the question. But here's Hillary Clinton, who's not even running, by the way, not even primarying Joe Biden. And she's willing to say his age is an issue. What is happening here? What has happened? What is going on? They should have jumped on this way before Hillary Clinton. I told them back then, no, say it. Yes, it is a problem. And it's not necessarily his age, but his mental decline. He is declining right before our eyes. We can see it. Yay. Oh, my God.
people have every right to consider it.
That set's from the 60s. So Congresswoman, she's right. And that was a neutrally objective statement, frankly, that absolutely all Americans should consider it. They should consider everything when weighing in on a presidential campaign. Perhaps this issue, however, will be more heavy than most.
I think it certainly is top of mind, given there's constant reminders of what a concern it is. But when you look at all of these different issues, Democrats are not happy with the work that President Biden is doing. So it should be a red flag to everyone watching to see how hard the DNC is trying to make sure that he is not held to account for his record. Simone Sanders was on Morning Joe the other day saying there will be no primary debate. There will be no stage for Bobby Kennedy or anyone else because the DNC will not allow it. It is all about Joe Biden. And I think it just reveals their hand. They are deathly afraid of Bobby Kennedy. They will do all that they can to pretend like he doesn't exist. And if he continues to build momentum, they're going to do everything they can to try to destroy his candidacy because they don't want voters to have an actual choice. They don't want to have a conversation where our president, his record will be examined and criticized.
And Tulsi, of all people, should know. She ran in 2020. She remembers the Democratic Party, the DNC, changing the rules during the primary debates so that some people would be removed from that debate stage and so that other people could just walk right on, like Michael Bloomberg. So Tulsi remembers, and we're going to do a flashback of that. I'm going to show you what Tulsi was able to say before she was removed. But this is something that really needs to be said. The fact that they don't want voters to have a choice, and they don't. The person has already been selected. To her point, what she said about Simone Sanders, 100% true. Simone Sanders made the statement and said that, no, there is not going to be a debate. The Democratic Party has chosen Joe Biden. I mean, Simone Sanders basically let the cat out the bag, blatantly telling the American people, if they would actually wake up and listen to what she was really saying, that the Democratic Party has already selected the person that they want in that seat. And anyone else who chooses to run against him is either going to be, to Tulsi's point, either ignored, or as someone like RFK Jr. starts to gain more momentum, they're going to smear him more and more heavily and heavily. This is why when I'm talking about these candidates, I'm giving you the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I don't want you guys to come back next year and be like, nobody told me about this. You know, I just told you about the connection with RFK Jr. and Jeffrey Epstein. Whether you like RFK or not, you need to know about that. So there are good and bads. And even with that particular situation, it seemed like the connection was more so with his previous wife. But I still need to tell you about it. You still need to know. You shouldn't have these surprise gotchas when it comes time around as we get closer and closer to the election.
I think that strategy would work.
I don't know if it'll work, but I'll tell you, he's incredibly vulnerable. I mean, we just reached day 853 of the Biden presidency. According to the 538 average, at this point in the presidency, he is the least popular president in the history of polling, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, which is kind of appropriate because he's the worst president since Jimmy Carter. He's 80 years old. He would be 86 if he won a second term. According to the Social Security Administration, and women live longer, but an average American man has a 60% chance of reaching the age of 85. So that means about a 40% chance that Kamala Harris would be president in some point in a second Biden term. So she's on the ballot. And
is that what you want? Ask yourself that. Do you want Kamala Harris to run this country? Have you seen Kamala Harris in interviews? Has Kamala Harris made any type of decision making? This is really important for people to know and understand. I want to be very clear here. And I'm not talking about the K-Hive people who simp for Kamala regardless of what she does. I'm talking about the people who are so afraid of any type of opposition to Joe Biden that they are willing to just settle for Joe Biden, even though they're not excited about him. By the way, it kills me when people say they're not excited about a candidate, but they'll vote for them anyway. I don't get it. I don't get it. So are you willing to make that choice to just go along with Joe Biden because you're afraid of any type of opposition against him, that you are willing to settle for possibly Kamala Harris? I don't think Joe Biden will make it through a full second term. I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if after he won, he was like, okay, peace out. That's it. I'm done. I resign. So think about that.
And she's even less popular than he is.
And when you bring up popularity, Kaylee, these polls reflect an absolutely dismal point of view of not only the president's fitness to serve, but also how he has performed or underperformed during his tenure.
They do. But, I have a little bit of deja vu because I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking we could have had this same conversation November of last year, before the midterms. Yeah. And look at what happened. The bad poll numbers for Biden didn't equal success for the GOP. So between now and next November, I am going to be a siren for the GOP having discipline here, because even when you dig into this poll, you see the 30% approval on the economy, on immigration, gun policy even. So it's a dire assessment. However, when you dig down into this poll, there was this one aspect that caught my eye, and it was on the debt ceiling. And it showed 79% of Americans say we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling, or if we do, we need to have deficit cuts. So I'm like, okay, Kevin McCarthy's winning on this. 79% of Americans agree. But when you look at who they're blaming for this, they're blaming Kevin McCarthy, Republicans, Democrats, and Joe Biden, meaning the GOP messaging is not breaking through.
Meaning that more people are waking up and are starting to realize that it's both parties. That's why some people are blaming Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden at the same time. Because people are starting to see, okay, we left the Trump presidency. Joe Biden was supposed to be so much better for the American people, right? He ran on the soul of the nation. And yet here we are still dealing with some of these issues that were present under Trump's presidency. But now there are even more issues that Americans have to deal with under Joe Biden, these economic issues, which, let's be fair. Yes, the pandemic came and that obviously it put a big dent into the economy. I'm not going to say that had nothing to do with it. But what I am trying to say is that some of the issues that people were dealing with before the pandemic, the homelessness issue, the healthcare issue, those issues still remain and were present before we had the pandemic, but they are worse now. So the thing is that more Americans are starting to see, look, we went from a Republican to a Democrat, and we still have these issues. We still have these economic issues. So she's telling you that means the GOP message is not getting through. I think the message is getting through. I just think more Americans are starting to wake up. One corporate party.
We have to be disciplined. We have to be smart. We have to be almost perfect because you're up against a liberal media. You're up against social media. So it's incumbent upon the GOP, be disciplined and get rid of the noise.
You know, you made me think of something, Tulsi. And when you're talking about how the left doesn't want Biden to take accountability or responsibility for everything that has failed on his watch.
Let's go ahead and debunk this here. She's saying the left. The Democratic Party is not left. They continue to do this. And Tulsi knows better than this. They continue to do this. Fox News, MSNBC, Morning Joe, they do this too. They refer to the Democratic Party as the left. The Democratic Party is not the left. Okay? The left are the progressives, or they're supposed to be the left. But they continue with this framing. And Tulsi, having been a part of all this, she should push back on this. Let's go on.
Maybe that's where some of the ageism speak is coming from. I mean, I remember when Hillary Clinton was running, and Obama, for that matter, with the Reverend Wright tapes. And it was always a little strange that late in that primary year between Obama and Hillary Clinton, how those tapes suddenly appeared. And I thought, well, the left would probably have more access to this stuff than a Republican sitting in the pews of Reverend Wright's church. And I just look at this. Who politically actually benefits if Joe Biden is suddenly silenced by, I don't want to take an acuity test? And you've seen all of those, not just Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but others coming out of the woodworks now. Maybe Manchin would take a peek. Now, Manchin's only a couple of years younger than Biden, so it may be suggested that he would need the test too. But you were saying something during the commercial that really jogged my brain. Age is a problem in general in our leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
When she asked the question, who benefits, in referencing Joe Biden's age, people with money always benefit. The corporations benefit. The donors benefit. See, that's the thing. It doesn't matter if Joe Biden wins or loses. Those people still get paid. Wall Street still makes money. They'll just make money off of the Republican candidate. It doesn't matter to them. You think they really care if it's a Democrat or Republican that's in the White House? As long as they get paid, they're fine. That's who benefits. The military-industrial complex benefits regardless if it's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House.
When you look at the focus on a lot of the issues, or the lack of focus actually on real issues that are affecting families and working people all across this country, you've got a lot of folks who are in office who are and have been way out of touch with that reality themselves for a very long time. worse yet, and taking age out of it, because, I'm not saying that our government has to be made up of only young people and young families and parents and working people. Right. It's just about caring. It's about saying, hey, I may not know what you're going through, so I'm going to come and visit your community. I'm going to listen. And I'm going to better understand how we in positions of public service can actually work together across party lines to address those needs. And that's what we were talking about, is the lack of care and the lack of actual intent to solve problems.
Right. You know what's...
But why is there that lack of care? There's that lack of care and intent to solve the problems for the people because both parties are owned by corporations. Both parties are owned by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. The days of caring about helping your constituents are gone. And now we've moved on to the days of, let me figure out how I can keep my seat. Let me figure out how I can get more money, fundraise more money for my reelection. Let me figure out how I can write that next book. That's what it's about now. It's about people becoming career politicians. People establishing generational wealth because of all this money that they're taking from these donors, and they continue to keep these seats. That's what it's about now. It's not about like trying to help the people. Those days are gone. And this is something I would say to RFK Jr. too. I know he wants to bring back the Democratic Party to a point in time when his uncle and his father were a part of it. But those days are gone. The Democratic Party is corrupt. The Republican Party is corrupt. They are both controlled by big money interests. And unless you detach big money interests from those parties, you will never take it back to what it used to be. And people have to really understand that.
Some of that is driven by, Emily, younger people don't have inevitability. They haven't been around for 50 years like Joe Biden, who basically becomes king. It's inevitable. Everything's inevitable. You don't have that when you're younger.
What's not inevitable, however, are those results. So to your point, Kaylee, we just need that discipline on the GOP side, and we'll get there if we stick together.
No, that's not how that works. Again, it reminds me of the similar talking points that Ro Khanna had in reference to the fact that Joe Biden was polling low. And Ro Khanna's talking points were, well, we just got to tell the story better. Now it's like she's saying the same thing for the GOP. She feels like the Republican Party basically needs to find a way to tell the story better. You can tell the story however you want, but American people know what the real story is when they look at their bank account. They know what the real story is when they go to the grocery store, when they buy gas. So you can keep coming up with all these stories, but people are waking up to that, I think. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring up this story with Tulsi Gabbard, because I want to remind you of a time when Tulsi Gabbard was very vocal during the Democratic primary debates. And after that, that was a wrap for Tulsi. So in reference to the DNC being fair, I want to remind you what really pushed them against Tulsi Gabbard the second time around, not the first time. The first time was when she decided to endorse Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. So that was a big snub. And Hillary's like, you are not a part of the party anymore, boo. But then she decided to run anyway in 2020. And this happened.
Proud of that work.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Gabbard. Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so.
That piece right there that Tulsi gave, like a lot of people bring up the marijuana story, but that piece right there, the fact that she blocked evidence to release a young man who was in prison until she was forced to do so, that actually is the more, I think, critical story that is told. And that is a true story. You can Google this and look this up. I read about it. So the fact that Kamala Harris is even sitting in the seat as vice president is what kills me with people like, oh, well, we got a black Asian woman as vice president in the White House. I'm like, she not for you. She not for you. What does Cornel West say? What he said, all skin folk ain't kin folk, right? Or he said black faces in high places. She's not, you think she ain't one of us? Kamala Harris ain't one of us. Kamala Harris didn't even want to say that she was, black or whatever, or half black or whatever. She didn't even want to claim it. She didn't want to claim it when she was running for the Senate. But all of a sudden, when she was running for president, all of a sudden it was, oh yes, I am a black woman. No, it was all a grift. It was all a grift. And she knew how to climb her way up that ladder. Kamala Harris knew exactly what to do. But the piece that Tulsi just gave you about her blocking evidence that was preventing a young man in prison from being free, that is actually more important than the marijuana conviction story. More people need to talk about that, I think. Let me go back just a little bit. Because after this, they were like, Tulsi, you got to go.
Block evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done.
You became a cop. She became a cop.
I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but
This is why she had parents, single parents arrested because their kids weren't in school. One of the women, you should look this up. One of the women that was arrested, she was actually in the ER. She was in the ER. So she didn't even know that her child didn't go to school.
legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
So is that who you want to be president, Kamala Harris? I don't believe Joe Biden's going to make it through a second term. I really don't think so. I think he would resign at some point. That's who you're looking at. Her right there. But to this point, that was pretty much the last we heard from Tulsi. The DNC, they continued to change the rules throughout the Democratic primary debate to make it so that less candidates would be on that stage, and to also, let's be real, to help Joe Biden. So Tulsi is correct that, and I was never a Tulsi stan, by the way, but Tulsi is correct about what the DNC is going to do. She's been through it. She already knows. I'm going to go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you for the super chat, P. Walker. People need to stop with the "we can't do worse than President blank." Think about it. Each president has been worse than the one before. Thank you for the super chat, Zero Campbell. Hashtag term limits and repeal Citizens United. Yeah, Citizens United is another one where we don't hear much about it anymore. Deneen says, I call Biden Harris the Wonder Twins of mass incarceration. Right? You got the cop, the former cop, And you got Crime Bill Joe. And people actually believe that they were going to like, oh yeah, we'll help with the criminal justice system. We'll make reforms. Oh, defund the police. Oh, I totally understand. Yeah. Give me a break. Of course, they're going to give the police more money. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button, guys. That helps me with the algo. Thank you very much.